Thank you very much for joining us this morning for our webinar on mastering flood cleanup. Floods and flood cleanup have indeed been a topic much discussed in recent months, as we all know, with the flooding in Victoria and Queensland especially. In the times of flood, tragedies like this, there's a lot of chaos and confusion associated with it. However, our response to it needs to be anything but that. We need to ensure that we have a planned, well executed and thought through effective plan to deal with it, with these floods. We had a recent tragedy up here in the Hunter Valley where a bus overturned. There was 10 people killed, numerous people injured. Following that, there was a training session held at the Police Academy here in Newcastle, for which we were privileged to be asked to watch. It was a high-level training with numerous people from the New South Wales government attending. It was a training session to establish how well the different arms of the emergency first responders could work together: the police rescue, ambulance, paramedics, fire service. They had a mock-up scene of 2 vehicles with 4 occupants in each, drunk teenagers, the story was, that had recently come home, slammed into each other, the T-bone. Some were dead, were injured, and then they had all these emergency services that they called upon, how well they could work together. And some were real-life actors, some were dummies. What struck me was watching the first ambulance arrive at this tragic scene, and the 2 paramedics got out the ambulance and they walked around that scene, and they didn't run, they didn't rush, nor did they actually attend to any single one of those injured people, despite some of them screaming and shouting, demanding attention. They walked at a steady but non-running pace, clipboard in each. They put tags on each of the injured people. Soon after that, more of the emergency services arrived. And what really struck me was, out of this confusion, the way that the training kicked in. There was no knee-jerk reactions. There was no confusion in the way that they tackled it. They mastered the scene using the training with steady, well thought through processes. And that's exactly the way that we need to be looking at our flood cleanup reaction. My name is Everard Painter, and I'm looking forward to sharing some data, some insights, some information with you to enable you to come up with well thought through plans that can be executed, to come up with responses to these flood cleanups that are effective and successful. It certainly is a complex and a challenging task that comes with many, many obstacles for professionals in the field. To ensure yourself and your team are safe and the task is efficient, the following is very important. Now, just wanted to share these key considerations with you. Training, safe work practices, personal protective equipment, adhering to industry standards, etc. Now, all of these are what I refer to as passive considerations. These are all the things that you need to have in hand already before you go on site. So if we have a look at the training briefly, it is strongly advised that technicians have completed training and are familiar with the RRCRC S500 2021 standard for the professional water damage and restoration. Can't speak highly enough of the need of having official professional training. We've worked many years with Coach 8. Many of you would know Scott McFasden. Got a brilliant new facility in Brisbane right as we speak. They're running flood house training. So very, very worthwhile. Any training that you get, the cost of it is probably going to be paid off within your first job. Training and having these RRCRC certifications is what's going to set you apart from your competition. Safe work practices, very, very important for any work, whether it's make safe or cleanup practices. You must ensure that a prioritized focus on the safety of your technicians, the building occupants, and other trades is ensured. Ensure that the WHS guidelines of WorkSafe are followed. Are you aware of them? Do you have a copy of them? Ensure that you follow them carefully. The third one is our personal protective equipment, PPE. Perhaps goes without saying, but something that often gets overlooked in times of trying to get things done quickly. Ensure that your PPE is always worn. Ensure that you understand the negative effects, not only of short-term acute injuries, but also long-term hazards that might be affecting your technicians' lungs, skin, etc. Understand the PPE guidelines that are given in safety data sheets, as well as other technical documents. Ensure that you adhere to industry standards. States and local governments have online guidelines for initial flood cleanup procedures. For flood recovery professionals, make sure that remediation work is conducted according to those RRCRC standards, the S500 2021 that we discussed. Communication protocols is a very, very important factor here. Remember that we need to ensure that all parties involved are communicated with in a very clear and understood manner. All verbal discussions must have written confirmation. Every discussion and decision must be documented. Second to last is our environmental considerations. Whilst it is a tragedy, whilst it is a environmental disaster in many respects, especially if it's been as a result of a weather event, respectful consideration must be made for the environment. And this can be followed through a lot with the chemicals that we choose, the intelligent and resourceful waste disposal, and also our consideration in our cleaning processes. Lastly, documentation and reporting is probably one of the most important things. It is so critical. Remember, first of all, that you're dealing with a lot of other parties. These can be insurers, loss adjusters, you may be dealing with local government, and first and foremost, you're dealing with other people's assets. And we need to regard this appropriately. Everything must be documented, must be reported, take plenty of photographs. So this leads us on to probably the key point of this webinar is the need of planning. As I referred to earlier in relation to that, the accident that we witnessed, the training that we witnessed in relation to the car accident, planning is so important to know as to how to go into an area where there is chaos and confusion and be able to work with a certain level of confidence, and your technicians all know exactly what to do. So we need to understand planning both in a make safe situation and then the long-term flood recovery situation. A successful plan considers several different things. The first one is our safety and PPE measures, first and foremost, for obvious reasons. The next thing is we need to do a documented scope of the project. Do we know exactly what the whole scope of the project involves? It may be simply a burst water pipe or a leaking toilet, but we need to ensure that we know the full scope of where that water has gone, subfloors, adjoining walls, adjoining bedrooms. We need to ensure that we have the entire scope of the project documented. We need to also have a plan for containment and isolation. This is a very, very important part of the procedure. We need to contain the damage to where it is so that fungi and mold and bacteria and other organic soiling doesn't get through to other areas of the building or other areas of the location. We need to make a proper isolation plan. Typically involves a negative air pressure area so that we don't have mycotoxins and molds drifting off into other areas of the buildings, even into attics. We need to be able to know as to where the air travels. We also need to be able to contain even items so that they are not taken to other areas of the house and contaminate other areas of the building. We need to have a discard and removal plan. Every item, every surface, every substrate that has been affected, we need to have a plan as to whether it is going to be discarded or whether it is going to be remediated. This comes right down to things like drywalling, carpets, ceilings, through to individual items, furniture. There has to be a discard and a removal plan for every single surface, every single item that is involved in this particular event. We can't be making decisions on the go. These are important decisions, and there has to be a strict plan in place to ensure that it is done successfully and effectively. Make safe disinfection, and we'll come to this a bit more later on, but our make safe disinfection is a very, very important step to ensure that technicians are kept safe right from the minute that they enter the property. Soiling removal, very important step. And then our drying procedures. Most of our drying procedures are going to be in accordance with the RRCR standards that we have discussed. This reiterates the importance of knowing these standards and also our training. Mold remediation, there is almost no flood cleanup plan that doesn't have mold remediation as part of the process. And we'll discuss that in a bit more detail, as we will the final disinfection. Lastly, we need to have a post-remediation verification step where the various parties are involved, whether it's the homeowner on a small job, it could be loss adjusters, it could be the insurance company, there could be other parties involved, including financial parties, the banks, etc. So this post-remediation verification step is very, very important, as we all know. So these are some important steps that a successful plan considers. They are not necessarily the only steps, but these are perhaps the key ones. Before moving on to our chemistry and the Actichem products, I wanted to just touch off on the categories of floodwater. And one of the things that I did want to make a note of here is that there is different categories of flooding that we should take note of as well. There is the small flood of clean water, which the homeowner or the DIYer may be able to handle themselves. But it is very, very important that the minute it extends to water that is grey water, as we will discuss shortly, as soon as it becomes bacterially or fungicidally contaminated, it is very, very important that a professional remediation company is brought in to remediate the area. So the categories of floodwater that we have, the first one is what we call category 1 floodwater, and this is water originating from a clean sanitary source, such as a broken water supply pipe. The second one is the floodwater containing significant contamination, such as a washing machine leak. And then the third one is water which has been contaminated with pathogens and toxic substances. So category 3 involves sewage backups. Now remember that many of our stage 2 categories can convert to a stage 3 just simply due to the passage of time. So many of our rain events might start off with as a 1 or 2, but due to the passage of time, as we know, many floodwaters, sewage becomes an issue, and even just due to biological growth over time, that can become a category 3. It's very, very important that we understand these 3 categories of floodwater, which are gone into further details in RRCRC standards, so that we handle them appropriately. So the flood recovery products, and this is where Actichem comes in. The big question is what to use where. Starting off with the soil removal, involves the removal of organic buildup, surface soiling, and the bulk mold growth. Now remember that in many, many cases, the property would have already been swept out, hosed out, but there may still be a lot of organic soiling on the surfaces, on the walls and the floors. And that's where we suggest a powerful product such as Clean Force, which is enzyme boosted and tackles your organic soiling with ease. Why we like Clean Force is because of its very high, or let's say enable us to dilute it through to very, very weak dilution rates, becomes very, very economical at 1 in 65 or 1 in 100 dilution range, together with that enzyme boost, being able to tackle our organic soiling, which is so prevalent with the flood cleanup. So this is our initial flood cleanup. Then our next step is, or our next group of products, I should say, is the disinfection. A complete kill of bacteria, viruses, and mold is required for successful flood restoration and mold remediation. Now, whilst I'm going through them in this process, in this order, please note that this is not necessarily the order of tackling a job. We will come to that shortly. So the two products that we have on our screen right now is the Thymox, which is a product which is becoming more and more a firm favorite in flood cleanup, mainly due to its ability at initial knockdown disinfection, very, very powerful knockdown disinfectant, along with this completely non-hazardous profile. So it is also safe on virtually all water cleanable surfaces, including carpets. So we've got the Wool Safe certification on that, which is very, very important. It means that your technicians can go into a house right up at the beginning when they walk in and do an initial knockdown of all of your pathogens, including viruses, bacteria, and molds and fungi, without worrying about any of the surfaces that it's going on, as well as being completely safe for them as well. The other product which has been a firm favorite over many years has been the Biosan 2. Very, very effective as a make safe and a final disinfectant. Very, very economical, given its 1 in 16 to 1 in 32 dilution ratio. The residues of Biosan 2 or Thymox will not interfere with any further work that may be required on removing mold staining. So in terms of mold, the Perside is a product that we're very familiar with relating to biodecontamination. Firstly, it is very, very powerful in terms of disinfection. It is the most powerful product we have, biodecontamination, where there is a very strong contamination associated with category 3 waters. Perside is a great product to use to ensure that all of your viruses, including your unenveloped viruses, are dealt with effectively. And of course, then it deals with our mold and our mold staining very effectively too. So Perside is certainly a product of choice. Odor control is an obvious. The key to odor neutralization is to remove the odor source. And that is why both with our Diozyme and our Diosan, which are our two key products for flood cleanup in terms of odor neutralization, we have a very, very strong focus on removing the odor source. The Diozyme relies on our quad bioenzyme base to remove our organic soiling, and the Diosan relies on powerful antimicrobial disinfectants. Then they are both boosted with the Elimotech odor absorption technology, which tackles odor molecules at their source. And then finally, they both have a replacement scent. So Diozyme based on our bioenzymes and the Diosan based on the antimicrobial, both with the Elimotech technology and both of the replacement scent. Very, very important points in relation to odor control. I have a slide in relation to substrate considerations. Carpets and fabrics, natural stone, floorboards and lacquered wood, structural timber and steel, plasterboard and painted surfaces. Now, the details of these are up on the screen, but they're also available on our website in the restoration manual, so I won't go through them all. But how the various chemicals react in relation to the various substrates, the information is all there and available so that you're able to make intelligent plans and intelligent decisions as to what you use where. So to move on to the process, flood cleanup is a very complex and challenging task that we've mentioned, but the process doesn't need to be confusing. Rather more, the process needs to be very well thought through, and a plan needs to be a very well thought through and executed plan. So Start off with the initial washdown is very, very important, and it's a make safe situation. So we want our technicians to be safe. So when we move into the job site, irrespective of what has been done or hasn't been done, before we do anything, can fog down, spray down, micro mist down the entire area with a product such as Timox to eradicate all our surface bacteria, viruses, mold and fungi, to ensure that our technicians are safe. And this is something which continues throughout the process. We then work away at removing the bulk organic loading. As I said, the Biosand 2 is a great cleaner in its own right, as is the Clean Force. The benefit of the Biosand 2 is that we've got a strong disinfectant action while we are along with the cleaning, and our Clean Force we've discussed as the strong action on organic soiling, especially stain removal on many of our hard surfaces. Once we have the facility, the building stripped down and dried out according to the IIRC guidelines, we then focus on our pathogen elimination, which can be done with the Biosand 2. It can be done with Timox. We've got a strong suggestion here in relation to the Perside and then the Biosand 2 and the Timox. The Perside is extremely positive for us in the sense that it can also remove all our stains associated with mold as well. There is always going to be an element of mold in all our float cleanup. A lot of it is going to come down to prevention of mold. So prevention of mold ensures that we have got our surfaces dried efficiently and in time according to the IIRC guidelines, but then followed up with our strong disinfectants, and the mold that is present can be removed with our Perside. And then lastly, we tackle our odor neutralization, as we've discussed with the Diozyme and the Diosan. The beauty of both of these products is that neither of them need to be rinsed. So that means that they can be sprayed into areas that are not readily accessible, such as subfloors, attics, underneath floor, base plates, and they do not need to be rinsed. Lastly, I'd just like to point to some further resources in relation to flood cleanup. There is a restoration handbook that is on our website. There is also various blogs on the Actichem website. I'd also like to point you to the IIRC website. There's various flood resources on there. I'd strongly recommend that you take advantage of these additional resources for yourselves. So thank you very much, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.